The Galactic Navigation Academy was the most prestigious institution in the known universe. Only the best pilots, tacticians, and navigators from across thousands of species were accepted. It was here that the brightest minds trained to traverse the infinite void of space, where one wrong calculation could mean getting stranded in the cold abyss forever. And now, on this day, the final exam was about to begin. The impossible test. The examination hall was a massive, circular chamber with holographic star maps filling the space above. At least 50 cadets from different species sat at their designated stations, their complex navigation tools flickering with alien symbols. The challenge? A hyperspace route calculation through one of the most dangerous and unpredictable regions of space. The Veil Nebula. Gravitational shifts. Rogue asteroids. Phantom energy surges. It was a navigator's worst nightmare. And the rules were simple. 1. You have 1 week to calculate the safest, fastest route. 2. No pre-programmed AI assistance. 3. Failure means instant disqualification. Among the competitors were Vorlaxians, Bracari, Zelvari, and Crovaxians, species that had been charting the stars for millennia. And then, there was him. The only human in the room. Lieutenant Commander Ryan Carter. Why is a human even here? From the moment he had stepped into the room, Carter had been an anomaly. The whispers started immediately. A human? In the Navigation Academy? A species that only just started deep space travel? This must be some kind of joke. The Zelvari instructor, a towering creature with luminescent tendrils, sneered at Carter. I do not expect much from you, human. His voice was condescending. Your species is young. Do not embarrass yourself. Carter only smirked. Noted, sir. He took his seat at the farthest end of the hall, stretching his arms as if he were about to take a nap rather than attempt the hardest exam in the galaxy. The exam begins. The moment the instructor activated the test, holographic star maps appeared before each cadet. Massive gravitational waves pulsed through the displayed routes. Space-time anomalies flickered like glitching code. Hundreds of tiny data points, velocity calculations, and probability matrices flooded the terminals of each student. And immediately, the aliens began working. The Vorlaxian cadet, with his species' quadruple-brained intellect, started processing every gravitational anomaly at once. The Crovaxian navigator extended his biomechanical limbs, linking directly into the simulation, analyzing space-time fluctuations with mathematical precision. The Bracari pilot growled as he manually mapped every possible escape trajectory in case of an emergency. And Carter? Carter just leaned back in his chair and sighed. Then he did something that made the entire room pause. He turned off his console. Confusion turns to outrage. The Zelvari instructor stiffened. Cadet Carter. What do you think you're doing? Carter yawned, stretched, and looked up at the holographic starfield. Then he said casually, I already have the answer. For a moment, the room was dead silent. Then, laughter. The Vorlaxian cadet chittered in amusement. Impossible. You must be joking. The Bracari navigator bared his teeth. You calculated an entire hyperspace route, in seconds? Even the Crovaxian strategist, usually emotionless, flickered his mechanical eyes in confusion. The numbers do not support your claim. But Carter just smiled. Numbers? He shrugged. I didn't use numbers. That statement made the aliens freeze. The Zelvari instructor narrowed his glowing eyes. Explain yourself, human. Carter stood up. He motioned toward the stars above them. You guys rely too much on data. His voice was casual, but there was an underlying confidence to it. You've forgotten how to actually navigate. The instructor hissed. And you believe humans have not? Carter smirked. Where do you think we came from? He pointed at the stars. And for the first time, the aliens began to realize something. Something terrifying. Humans had been navigating by the stars long before they ever had computers. They didn't need AI calculations. They didn't need hyperspace models. They just looked up, and knew. A revelation that changed everything. Carter tapped on the holographic map and drew a single line with his finger. A perfect route. One that avoided every anomaly, every gravitational shift, every rogue asteroid. The instructor scanned it. His tendrils twitched violently. This is correct. The room exploded into chaos. No way. How? That's not possible. The Bracari pilot slammed his console in frustration. That route should take weeks to calculate. Carter chuckled. Yeah, if you're slow. The Zelvari instructor's glowing eyes widened. Because in that moment he understood. Humans weren't just guessing. They were using a skill long forgotten by the galaxy. A skill that had allowed ancient sailors on Earth to cross vast oceans without technology. Instinctual navigation. And for the first time in his life, the Zelvari instructor felt something he never expected to feel about humans. Fear. The aftermath. The exam results were released within minutes. The alien cadets? They were still weeks away from finishing their calculations. But Carter's route was already confirmed. He had passed the test in under 5 minutes. For the first time in the history of the Academy, a human had set a new galactic record. And the aliens? They had just realized that humanity was far, far more dangerous than they ever imagined. The Galactic Navigation Academy had been the pinnacle of interstellar travel education for over 1,000 years. It had seen thousands of species, each bringing their own unique skills to the art of space navigation. But never before had it seen something as utterly baffling as what had just happened. A human, a member of a species that had barely been spacefaring for a few centuries, had outperformed every other species in hyperspace route calculation. And he did it in less than 5 minutes. The galaxy reacts. Word of Ryan Carter's feat spread beyond the Academy within hours. By the next day, every major intelligence agency, military strategist, and scientific institution across the galaxy had heard of it. And none of them believed it. The Brakari War Council. On the war-torn homeworld of the Brakari Dominion, the Supreme Warlord sat in his massive throne room, his crimson eyes glaring at the holoscreen in front of him. The report was clear. The human navigator had solved the impossible in mere minutes. One of his top generals growled. This must be a trick. Some kind of deception. The warlord shook his head. No. The Academy verified it. His eyes narrowed. Which means humans are more dangerous than we thought. For centuries, the Brakari had prided themselves on speed in war. Their fleets could strike faster than any other empire. But now, a single human navigator could outpace their best route calculators. That was a problem. The Zelvari Science Council. In the floating citadel of Zelvaris Prime, the brightest minds of the Zelvari race analyzed Carter's route. A group of 8 tentacled scholars hovered over a massive star map, replaying his movements over and over. It makes no sense, one of them whispered. We ran every known simulation and his trajectory is the most precise we've ever seen. Another Zelvari shivered. If humans can do this, without computers. There was a moment of uneasy silence. Finally, the eldest among them spoke. Then we have grossly underestimated them. The Krovax Intelligence Division. The Krovaxians were one of the most analytical and strategic species in the galaxy. Their cybernetic-enhanced brains could process trillions of calculations per second. Yet now their intelligence division was at a loss. A shadowy Krovax leader sat in his darkened chamber, his metal fingers tapping the table. A report hovered in front of him, displaying Carter's navigation patterns. No AI assistance. No hyperspace matrices. No predictive modeling. The Krovaxian agent standing before him shifted uneasily. Sir, it's like he just felt the route. The leader's mechanical eyes glowed. Then we are dealing with something beyond logic. For the first time in Krovaxian history, their intelligence reports contained an entry that had never been used before. A single line of text. Threat level, unknown. Back at the Academy, Carter had no idea that his actions had sent the galaxy into a panic. He was kicking back in the cadet lounge, sipping a cup of Terran coffee while the other students sat around him in stunned silence. The Brakari cadet, still in disbelief, finally growled. I don't get it. How did you do it? Carter took another sip, then shrugged. It's just how we learned back home. The Zelvari cadet leaned forward, eyes glowing. Explain. Carter smirked. Humans used to navigate the oceans of our planet without maps. Without computers. Just by looking at the stars, reading the currents, feeling the way the wind moved. He tapped his temple. It's instinct. It's experience. It's survival. The Brakari narrowed his eyes. You're saying your ancestors could do this thousands of years ago? Carter nodded. Yep. And we never forgot. The aliens stared at him like he was some kind of monster. Because in that moment they understood. Humans weren't just good navigators. They were born navigators. And that changed everything. The revelation about human navigation instincts was spreading like wildfire through the galaxy. Governments, war councils, and intelligence agencies scrambled to understand what they had missed about humanity. Because if one human could outperform entire species worth of trained navigators, what else were they capable of? The Galactic Union Emergency Summit. Within 72 hours of the navigation exam, an emergency summit was called by the Galactic Union, the coalition of the most advanced species in the galaxy. In a massive, floating citadel above the gas giant Tarmac 9, the most powerful leaders in the universe gathered to discuss one thing: the humans. The chamber was filled with hundreds of alien delegates, each species represented by their highest-ranking officials. At the center of the hall, a holographic display projected Ryan Carter's navigation route, perfectly calculated in under 5 minutes. The room buzzed with tension. A Brakari warlord slammed his clawed fist on the table. This changes everything. If humans can instinctively navigate better than our best computers, what happens when they apply that to warfare? The Zelvari Prime scholar folded his bioluminescent tendrils. Or espionage. Imagine human agents slipping past our planetary defenses without detection. If they can chart paths through unstable nebulae, what stops them from bypassing security grids? A Krovax intelligence commander turned his glowing cybernetic eyes toward the assembly. We need to consider the possibility that humans have been concealing their full capabilities. The chamber fell silent. Because deep down, every alien leader was thinking the same thing. Were humans holding back? The interrogation of Ryan Carter. Back at the academy, Carter had no idea that he had become the most talked-about person in the galaxy. That was until he was summoned to the academy's highest-ranking official. Grand Navigator Sirik Valnok, a Zelvari elder with centuries of experience, stood before him, analyzing him with unreadable eyes. Lieutenant Carter. His voice echoed through the chamber. I have questions. Carter, still in his casual stance, gave a half-smirk. Sure, shoot. Sirik's tendrils twitched in irritation, but he proceeded. Your people, how long have you been capable of this? Carter frowned. Of what? The Zelvari elder motioned toward the massive star map floating above them. Navigating without computers. Without calculations. Just instinct. Carter shrugged. Since forever, I guess. Long before we had space travel, we had sailors. Explorers. We crossed entire oceans without technology. We used the stars. The winds. The waves. Sirik stared at him. You're telling me that your ancestors were doing what we consider an advanced skill, before your species even left your planet? Carter nodded. Yep. There was a long pause. Then the Zelvari elder did something that terrified everyone in the room. He took a step back. In Zelvari culture, stepping back meant fear. The silent panic among the powers. The reaction from Sirik reverberated across the Galactic Union. Because if the greatest navigation mind in the galaxy was afraid of a single human cadet, then what did that say about the entire species? Across the galaxy, hidden meetings were held. Governments issued classified reports titled, The Human Problem. For centuries, humanity had been viewed as young, naive, reckless. But now, they were starting to look like the most dangerous species in the galaxy. And no one knew what to do about it. The galaxy was on edge. Governments held secret war councils. Military fleets ran simulated battle scenarios. Espionage agencies tried to analyze human history for any other hidden superiorities. Because if humans had this level of navigation skill, what else were they capable of? The experiment. The Galactic Union, desperate for answers, decided on a test. They would create an impossible navigation scenario. One that no species, no computer, no AI had ever solved. A challenge designed to prove that what Carter did was a fluke. The Maelstrom Drift Challenge. The test site, the Maelstrom Drift. A chaotic expanse of space, filled with black holes, shifting gravity wells, and ion storms. A single miscalculation meant instant death. No ship had ever made it through intact. And now, the Galactic Union had summoned its best navigators from across the cosmos. They had one task: find a path through. The top Brakari, Zelvari, and Krovaxian navigators began working. Each of them using advanced AI, massive supercomputers, and quantum processors. They estimated it would take 3 weeks to calculate a possible route. Then they turned to Ryan Carter. He cracked his knuckles and leaned back in his chair. All right, let's do this. 5 minutes later, he had the solution. The reaction. At first, no one believed it. The best mathematical minds had said it was impossible. But Carter had charted a path that worked. And when the Galactic Union tested his route with an unmanned probe, it made it through without a scratch. The entire council chamber fell into stunned silence. The Zelvari High Scholar whispered in shock. They were never lost. They never needed maps. The stars were always enough for them. The Krovaxian intelligence commander stared at the data. And that means, they are always ahead of us. The Brakari warlord clenched his claws. A species that can outmaneuver any fleet in existence. That is the greatest military advantage in history. For the first time in galactic history, the most powerful civilizations were afraid. Not because humans were violent. Not because humans were conquerors. But because humans never needed maps. And that meant they could go anywhere. At any time. And no one could stop them. Ryan Carter's final words. As Carter walked out of the Galactic Union Summit, he was approached by a nervous Selvari journalist. "Lieutenant Carter," she asked, "how do you do it? How do humans navigate like this?" Carter grinned. "Simple." He pointed up at the sky. "We just look up and go." The aliens stared in horror. Because they finally understood. Humans weren't just good at navigating. They were born explorers. And now the galaxy belonged to them. If you enjoyed this, subscribe to The Void Narratives for more epic sci-fi stories. Rocket.